A wave of contention has been rocking the Maroon community of Accompong in St. Elizabeth following news that the community is printing and trading its own currency. Some of the community members are calling it a scam, and the Bank of Jamaica has responded. TVJ's Andrew Laidley reports.
This is the treaty the Accompong Maroons signed with the British government in 1738. It gave the Maroons control over the land they now inhabit. The language of the treaty does not speak specifically to Accompong St. Elizabeth as a sovereign state. However, the Maroons have referenced the treaty as a sign of their sovereignty for decades. That's why the colonel of the Accompong Maroons, Ferron Williams, says the Maroons should have their own currency. But that idea has been met with mixed reactions.
This is scam, big time scam.
The Accompong persons believe it's scam.
Me personally believe so. I'm not talking to the community because a whole heap of them in here because they can come and give them $1,000, them think them get money. But me know what money is. Me work for money. Me know what money is. Some can fool them or tell them what he want to tell them. But I know that what is going on here, it's illegal. And the colonel is in it up to him neck.
So we being sovereign in our compound, we are indigenous people. So being indigenous, that means that we're supposed to have everything for ourselves, right? We're not supposed to depend on Jamaica government for anything at all. We own money, we own hospital, we own bank, we own army, everything. That's the meaning of sovereignty. And you go way beyond that too, you understand? So when some person say we can have our loan or we can have our own money, they might have crap.
I like a souvenir business, but I no money where to spend.
The Accompong Maroons told our news team that this building is the Central Solar Reserve Bank of Accompong. That's where the Lumi currency is supposed to be regulated and printed. However, the Bank of Jamaica has distanced itself from the Maroon institution, posting this advisory in the Gleaner newspaper. It states that only the Bank of Jamaica has the authority to issue currency notes and coins in the island, and any currency which is not issued by the BOJ is not legal tender in the island. Colonel Williams told our news team that while he supports a Maroon currency, he does not approve of how the currency is being distributed in Accompong. In the meantime, the Accompong Maroons are directing their frustration at the investor who is printing and distributing the Lumi notes without the permission of the colonel.
He's too bright and too enough, and for me, I feel that he should get evicted.
The community is against it except the little few who don't know what money is. And many of them come from outside, them grow up out there and come claim Maroon as being a part of the community. One day Maroon.
The investor, who is also being called the Accompong Minister of Finance, has not been seen in the community for weeks, and efforts by our news team to speak with the individual have been unsuccessful. Andrew Laidley, TVJ News.
We go to more reactions now to the multi-million-dollar corruption saga involving the Education Ministry and the Caribbean Maritime University, CMU. Attorney at law Lloyd McFarlane believes the case is not the easiest to prove. TVJ's Andrea Chisholm has our follow-up.
Roel Reed, his wife Sharon and daughter Cheryl, Professor Fritz Pinnock, and Kim Brown Lawrence, counselor for the Brownstown Division, have all been charged with the conspiracy to defraud.
A conspiracy to defraud charge is not the easiest of things to prove. And they're going to have to be sure that they have all of the evidence required to prove the different areas of the charge.
Prosecutors claim that false documents were created to funnel money from the CMU's CAPES program and persons paid for services that were not done. For example, Brown Lawrence did not provide meals for students. After Professor Pinnock authorized payments, contractors would transfer the money to Mr. Reed's bank account or hand it to him. In addition, Mr. Reed's helper was paid by the Education Ministry, but the helper did not know. That's where Reed's daughter comes in. She's accused of collecting the debit card for the helper's bank account and giving it to her mother. Reed's wife allegedly got over $1 million from that bank account.
A conspiracy to defraud count has to be looked at in terms of each separate accused person. And if you look at one of them, the simplest case, the daughter, Cheryl, The problem that the Crown has there is that they're asserting that she did one thing essentially in relation to some debit card or ATM card, that she took it from someone and gave to her mother. That is not sufficient to show that she was in agreement. So in relation to all five, the prosecution will have to show that they did all of these things knowing that the acts were unlawful and going ahead with them just the same.
Now, Mr. Reed and Professor Pinnock have both been charged with misconduct in public office. Attorney at law Lloyd McFarlane says the charge is not easy to prove, and for the most part, misconduct in public office is usually associated with bribery. The court was told on Thursday that Mr. Reed instructed Professor Pinnock to hire his wife Sharon, who is CMU's legal affairs manager.
That is not necessarily criminal in terms of what they're saying, because the objection to this is that she's not an attorney at law, but she's a lawyer. And I'm not sure that the post requires that you actually be an attorney at law, when in fact a law degree might be sufficient. In addition, we have to remember that nepotism is not a crime. And therefore they have to show that the circumstances were such that it wasn't just favoring his wife, but that in fact there was an element of fraud involved in putting her in the office.
Next charge, possession of criminal property under the Proceeds of Crime Act POCA. All persons except Professor Pinnock have been charged with that offence. And also under POCA, Mr. Reed and Pinnock have been charged with engaging in transactions involving criminal property.
What it is really going to is saying that monies that may have been gained or garnered from certain illegal acts is in the circumstances criminal property. The criminal property side is really looking at the fact that these persons are supposed to have got other persons to collect monies for them and then benefited. And it says here it doesn't matter whether they benefited directly or indirectly. The prosecution might have some strong grounds in relation to that, provided that they can follow the money and prove, in fact, that these monies went to these different persons.
Both men have also been charged under the Corruption Prevention Act. Andrea Chisholm, TVJ News.
The Health Ministry is sounding the alarm as school children have reportedly taken to the practice of vaping. Vaping is the inhaling of fumes created by an electronic cigarette, also known as e-cigarettes. But with several deaths in the United States being linked to vaping, the Health Ministry is renewing its focus on stamping out all forms of smoking.
The ban on smoking in public spaces came into effect in 2013. However, Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says enforcement has been lacking. But with a new form of smoking, vaping, now becoming popular locally, the ministry is ramping up its vigilance.
And as you know, from a public health perspective, we do not support any form of smoking.
Vaping, he says, is of great concern as, like in the U.S., young people, including children, are the ones gravitating to this form of smoking.
It is becoming a common practice in our schools, in our high schools. We have heard and seen and gotten evidence of a number of cases, and the ministry again is looking at that with the intention of having discussions with the Ministry of Education to see to what extent the protocols within the school can be adjusted to monitor more closely the possibility of the practice taking place and take whatever action is necessary to try and stamp it out.
This week, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention said there were 26 deaths linked to vaping in the United States and over 1,000 confirmed and probable cases.
I have asked the Chief Medical Officer in the ministry to examine the reports that are coming out of those jurisdictions and to assess the clinical side of that information with the intention of, in the worst case scenario, doing similar to what has been announced in terms of a ban, but at least if not, for the time being, offer an advisory or warning to those who utilize this particular type of product or practice.
As for the smoking of tobacco and ganja, Dr. Tufton says it appears that some persons have misinterpreted the decriminalization of possession of 2 ounces of ganja as permission to smoke in public. He says he's in discussions with the National Security Minister, Dr. Horace Chang, about improving enforcement of the ban on smoking in public spaces.
From public health's perspective, it is a discussion that we need to have in government. The enforcement of the law, we have some jurisdiction under the Public Health Act where we can cite establishments for allowing smoking in public.
He says the interministerial strategies agreed on will be included in a comprehensive bill on tobacco consumption, which is expected to be ready by the end of the year. That law will also have specific provisions concerning the smoking of ganja in public spaces.
Up first this evening, JLP leader and Prime Minister Andrew Holness has reacted to the arrest and charge of former Education Minister Will Reid and his co-accused in a major probe involving the Education Ministry and the Caribbean Maritime University CMU. Mr. Holness says though he's saddened about what has happened, the government remains strong against corruption. He was speaking at an Area Council 1 meeting today at the Girl Guides Association of Jamaica in St. Andrew. We have more in this report.
Former Education Minister Will Reid, his wife Sharon and daughter Sharel, Caribbean Maritime University CMU President Professor Fritz Pinnock, as well as Councillor for the Brownstown Division Kim Brown Lawrence, all implicated in the multi-million-dollar corruption scandal involving the CMU and the Education Ministry. They were arrested and charged last week. JLP leader and Prime Minister Andrew Holness has been watching the developments.
There is no question that it saddens me. It saddens the entire party, and I know that you who sit here as well, that you are indeed very saddened, very concerned by what has happened.
Mr. Holness maintains that the Jamaica Labour Party administration is serious about tackling corruption.
We will do everything within our powers to ensure that wherever there is corruption, wherever there is misuse of power, misappropriation of public resources, that this administration will ensure that the mechanisms are in place to ferret it out and to bring them before the courts.
Corruption has become a political issue, the Prime Minister argues. On the face of it, Mr. Holness says nothing is wrong with that because politicians must understand that if he or she engages in or tolerates corruption, there's a political price.
Ultimately, this matter, which is a political matter, when the electorate has to now consider and decide what did this government do when they were faced with issues of corruption versus what the pretenders did when they had power.
Meanwhile, Mr. Holness says he's noticed a disturbing trend where the opposition wants to place the Integrity Commission, which investigates and prosecutes corruptions, publicly under political pressure.
When you start to place pressure on them, and they act, what will people believe? People will start to think, oh, they only acted because the opposition brought pressure. And others will think that their actions are politically biased because they only acted because the opposition brought pressure. I think it's a dangerous road on which we are treading. Can you imagine if we were to come out and criticize the police for investigating, MOCA for doing their job, the FID, how that would undermine the integrity of those agencies.
We begin this evening with a primetime news follow-up. There is still uncertainty about the current location of the Criminal Records Office. Our news team understands that the authorities have been given a time frame to address air quality issues raised by the Public Health Department earlier this week.
Now TVJ's Anthony Logg has the latest.
I'm standing here along Orange Street in downtown Kingston. Just behind me is the Criminal Records Office. Now, for weeks, this location was being retrofitted to facilitate the relocation of the Criminal Records Office. But earlier this week, the Public Health Department came in and raised several issues about air quality in the building. Operation is in full swing today.
But if that's not addressed, the government will have to find yet another location to house the Criminal Records Office. There has been public outcry already, and now the fresh air quality concern is worrying. On Friday, Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson and the National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang visited the location. Our cameras were not allowed on the inside, but it's understood
that extensive work is underway to ensure the doors remain open.
I have made contact with the engineering firm to take some steps to have it corrected by Monday. So we intend to ensure that the facility continues the operation, but they do so under conditions that are acceptable in terms of health standards.
The main problem now is how we get as much fresh air as we need in and out of the building.
The Police Federation raised concerns about the state of the building before operations began, but it appears those calls fell on deaf ears. We put the issue to the police commissioner.
So we did considerable work before moving in here. It was the place that was most ready that we could find to move in. And as the minister had said, the consequences of not issuing certificates is significant to the country and to people. And so we have to balance the two things. This place is not ideal, but a lot of people got together and did a whole lot of work over a short space of time to try and get this place ready, or as ready as possible.
According to the commissioner, more than 1,700 certificates have been issued since the Criminal Records Office resumed operations on Tuesday. So, with extensive work to be carried out this weekend to address air quality issues at the office, there's no doubt Jamaicans will be keeping a close watch.
We recognize that there are challenges. We're working significantly in overcoming them so we can provide the service. But the concerns that our staff are in good conditions and the best conditions are something that's sort of near and dear to me, certainly, and the welfare of my members. So that we balance both things, and we're working at it to get everything up the way it should be.
Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.